So welcome to Ecosystem Notes. You should have these digital notes available up and running while you're watching this. So as a possible way to make it a little bit easier, watch the video on one device, like let's say your phone, and have your Chromebook open with the digital copy of the notes that you could type in your answers. Or any two devices working together is totally fine.
Or if you'd like, you can print them out and fill them out that way. You are not turning these into us. It's just for you to fill out so that way you can participate in the activities that are coming up. So when you look at this statement, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. What do you think of when you hear that?
So there's a spot for you to respond to that. Take a moment, whether it's you're writing it or you're typing it, take a moment and think about it. And you could pause it. We're not going to sit here and wait that time.
Yeah.
But that's what you're really trying to decipher. What does that mean?
Ecosystems is a perfect representation of exactly what that is talking about, because everything in an ecosystem is connected in one way or another. So here, you guys are already familiar with an ecosystem. Here you have a desert ecosystem. You probably notice first all of the living things that are here, okay? Because there's a wide variety. Even though it has very little rainwater in a desert, there is still a lot of life there. So we see the animals, that's obvious, but the other living things, the other living organisms like the plants, grass, that's all a part of the ecosystem too. We also have the non-living parts of the ecosystem, like the mountains, the rocks, the air, the sun. Those are all a part of the ecosystem, but they are the non-living parts. So we're going to take a look at both of those.
What about soil?
Oh, soil is a little bit of both, I think.
Mm-hmm. Just throwing a little curveball in there.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Awesome.
So an ecosystem is all of the organisms living in an area together with their physical environment. Physical environment would be something like the mountains, right? The water, the air, that kind of stuff.
Right. Now, they don't necessarily have clear boundaries, okay? So let's take a look at this. There's two ecosystems I see here, and there's not a real clear boundary. I see a pond ecosystem, which would be a water ecosystem, and then I see like a grassy area with trees. So that's another ecosystem. So they don't really have clear boundaries. And again, you can see the living and non-living parts of this. And a part of the living includes like the plankton, okay? And we're going to have fancy terms for this living and non-living. We call them biotic and abiotic. So when we look at our ecosystem, we need some things that keep the ecosystem going, okay? Like energy, mineral, nutrients, carbon dioxide, water, oxygen, just basics. And usually the energy in an ecosystem comes from the sun. If you look here, the sun is the energy that drives the ecosystem because the plants undergo photosynthesis, okay? Animals eat plants, so the energy was absorbed by the plant. The animals eat the plants, so then they get that energy, and then through cellular respiration, they exhale carbon dioxide, which is what the tree needs for photosynthesis, and the tree gives us oxygen. Okay, so all of these cycles in the ecosystem are really driven by the energy from the sun.
And so if you think about anything that you ate today or yesterday, if you trace back that energy source, it would derive or ultimately come from the sun.
Right.
Regardless of what you eat.
This is that fancy term that I said before, biotic and abiotic factors. Now, biotic parts of the ecosystem are the living or once living parts. So that means like you have a tree, you know that's definitely biotic. But let's say the branch and the dead leaves fall off of a tree. Even though the leaves are dead and the branch is no longer a part of that living organism, it's still considered biotic because it came from something that was once living. Okay.
So in that one picture before you had, in the video, you had that rotting log. That rotting log would be considered biotic because it's, even though it's no longer living, at one time was living. And the abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the ecosystem: air, water, rock, sand, light, temperature. Those are non-living factors.
And if you look at the word itself, the word biotic, it has the word bio in it. What does bio mean? What does it mean?
Oh, you're asking?
Yeah.
I thought you were waiting for somebody else to answer. You want me to answer?
Well, there's nobody else here, so.
So I think of the word biology and life.
Yeah, bio, life,
Yeah.
living. So here you have your living, your biotic, and abiotic means not living, kind of like if it's atypical. Atypical means not typical.
So again, you could see that rotting log would be part of the biotic factors of this pond ecosystem, right?
What would the sun be considered, biotic or abiotic?
Yeah, you're pausing for them, not for me, right? What do you want me to answer?
Yeah, you can answer.
You
Why
sure?
not? Yeah,
cool.
go
It would
ahead.
be abiotic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Look, there's a kangaroo and a bird.
What about the water molecule itself? So the water itself would be
Abiotic.
What about the bacteria living in the water?
Well, they're living, so biotic.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so good at this.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we pointed out actually a bunch of organisms, and organisms are an individual living thing. You are an organism.
An oak tree?
As long as it's one.
I said an.
Good.
An insect?
Yep, it's one.
What about one bacteria?
Just one.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
That would be an organism.
Yes.
What about if I had a group of organisms? What would I call that?
Well, that's now a species, as long as it's a group of the same organisms.
Interesting. You have any examples of this, or?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, here you go.
Yeah.
So here we have a frog. So that's an organism. Here we have a population of frogs that are all in the same species.
They should be called like the Cheeto frogs because they look like Cheetos.
They do, but I bet you they're poisonous.
Cheddar?
Don't eat them.
I would never eat a frog, but I'm just saying they kind of look like Cheetos. I don't know. What do I know? Cool.
Okay, so again, here we have an organism. Okay, we have a gray wolf, and then we have a population of gray wolves. Now, wolves are really a part of the same species, but they don't always have to look alike in order to be a part of the same species, okay? These are part of the canine species. But there are all different types of wolves, and if we look across America, we have populations of wolves in different ecosystems. And that's what this is showing.
This is showing that the gray wolf is the common ancestor for
Puppies,
dogs, any kind of dog. So any type of dog that you have, if you traced it back, would have a gray wolf in its what do we call that? Line of heritage. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for helping me out.
You're welcome.
So regardless of the dog type, all dogs are the same
Species.
Isn't that cray-cray? So a Great Dane and a pug are the same
species.
Cool.
This is fun.
It's kind of interesting.
It really is.
I find that the most mind-blowing.
If you could have a dog, what would it be?
Me? Springer Spaniel, because I had one as a kid and I loved it. It was awesome. How about you?
Okay. I don't know. There's too many to choose from.
How about one of each?
Okay.
Okay.
So this is an example of, now let's go back to this for a second. All dogs are part of the same species, which is why we can mate dogs to come up with a species of dog that we want. Kind of like we have the Labradoodles, which is a Labrador and a poodle make a Labradoodle. And that can happen because they're the same species, so they can create fertile offspring.
And so what happened, people did something called artificial selection, where people said, oh, I like that dog's nose and I like that dog's size. So let's mate the two of them together to have a dog that is similar in size and has that face. So that's how we got all these different types or breeds of dogs. But they're all the same species because they can have offspring.
This is an example of, well, you have two different species here. We have a horse and we have a donkey. This is a mule. The only way to get a mule is if you were to breed a horse with a donkey to get a mule. Now, because a horse and a donkey are not the same species, the mule is not fertile and cannot have its own offspring. This is also true in this case. Okay, this is a liger. And in order to get a liger, a lion would be mated with a tiger and it would create a liger. Now that liger, again, is not fertile. It cannot create other liger babies.
And then, so a liger would be a male lion and a female tiger. And then they have a tie-on, which would be a male tiger and a female lion.
Okay, so, and again, going back to dogs, the reason why they do this is because, like we were saying before, the traits, the selective traits that we look for, that we need in an animal or we want in an animal, this would be the selective breeding. Okay, you have the horse, which is tall, strong, and then you have the resilience of a donkey, and that's why they wanted to create a mule.
Okay. True story. I was actually riding a mule. My wife was riding a horse. We were on a sunset ride, and I had no idea I was on a mule until the guy actually turned around to me and said, "So how do you like riding a mule?" And it rode really nice. And your back was hurting you at the end because your horse didn't ride so nice. So the mule had very interesting characteristics. It actually rode different than a horse. But I had no idea I was on a mule until I was told I was on a mule. He was cute, though.
Yeah, he kind of looked like this.
Yeah, he really did.
He looks like a horse.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, if you remember back from, I don't even know, elementary classes.
Probably sixth grade. Yeah, they did in sixth grade.
Where you did your genetic traits, your Punnett squares. Okay. This is why they breed two different organisms in order to get the traits that they're looking for. And again, this is called selective breeding.
Just more examples of Punnett squares. We'll be revisiting this as we go throughout. This might be something you might remember from sixth grade.
Okay. So now, every organism has a habitat, okay, which consists of biotic and abiotic factors. So, and each organism is very well suited to its habitat.
And relies on the habitat in order to survive.
So, and I'm sure you're already aware of this stuff. Okay, a community is a group of various species that live in a place and interact with each other. So, we have a community, if you have like ducks and cardinals, geese, that's now a community. There are various species that are living together in the same place and they interact, whether it's competing for food or whatever it may be. Okay, here's your pond community. This is where we have a deer, okay, we have a goose, we have a duck, we have fish. And these are all little organisms that are interacting with each other to make up this pond community.
And do you know if that goose is silly?
Well, then he'd be a silly goose.
Exactly. That's what I was asking.
I don't know.
You need to be clear about these things. Okay, cool.
Okay, so habitats is a particular place an organism lives.
So you guys are probably very familiar with the clownfish on the side from Finding Nemo, right? He lives in the sea anemone. Anemone.
Okay, and all right. So hopefully you enjoyed that video.
And this is where you should be in your notes. You should have this all filled out. And this ends part 1
of ecosystems. More to come.
Stay tuned.